Hey everyone, welcome back to the Resident Founder Podcast. I'm your host, Daniela, an emergency medicine resident doctor, taking it behind the scenes as I'm building my own company called Payscope MD. In addition, I love to bring on other physicians who are building amazing things outside of medicine, whether it's entrepreneurship, content creation, music, or anything that shows that you could become a doctor outside of the bedside. Today, I am very thankful to have Dr. Samuel Padilla. He is an anesthesiology resident over at Harvard, and him and I went to med school together. And right now, he's been building his social media platforms to really give the behind the scenes of his journey to anesthesiology, as well as giving tips and advice to other pre-medical students and medical students as inspiration. And so with that, Dr. Padilla, also known as Dr. Bimby, happy to have you as part of the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Daniela. Like you mentioned, we went to med school together. You're one of my best friends. I really admire what you're doing with your podcast and is inspiring other people. And to be honest, you were one of the people that inspired me to go on social media and share my journey. So I'm happy to be here and happy to have this conversation with you.
Absolutely. So for the listeners here, Samuel just recently got married. Shout out to Nicole, his beautiful wife, who's also she's in dentistry, and just recently had their wedding in Puerto Rico, which was amazing. 10 out of 10 experience. We were on the west side of Puerto Rico. I love my experience. I'm not saying that just because you're here, but like everything was great. The food, everything. Like, love Puerto Rico. And at Samuel's wedding, he came up to me as I was getting ready to leave because unfortunately I had to fly out the next day to go back to work. And Samuel was like, "Hey, I love what you're doing. I'm gonna do the same thing. I have my social media." I didn't take him seriously. I was like, "All right, you're a little tipsy. You had a lot to drink. Everything is going. The music is going. Bad Bunny's playing. It's okay." The next day, when I finally come back to the mainland and I'm just scrolling through TikTok, I see it says literally Dr. Samuel Padilla, and he's doing his own social media on TikTok. And the next thing you know, I think that video that you have as your intro is like almost like over 40,000 views. So tell me about why did you want to make content creation and why specifically like TikTok, and even now you've been immigrating over to Instagram.
Yeah. So like you mentioned, it was a decision I made kind of on the fly. I honestly that day, when I was talking to you, I didn't have plans on to about going to social media, but seeing you inspire other people, seeing the message that you were getting out, um, I felt like I wanted to do the same thing for the Latino community. Feel like I had a very unique journey, going from Puerto Rico to the U.S. for med school and now being an anesthesia resident. And the reason I was able to make it this far is because I was able to meet people along the way did that were able to make it. So I figured if I can show people that I made it and how I made it, we can have more Latino representation in medicines. That's always going to be my goal, to inspire other people and to help them achieve their dreams. So I'm
It's
happy to
absolutely
be here.
amazing. No, absolutely. And I love it because once again, like you've blown up in such a very short matter of time. Like I said, that intro video has like over 40,000 views. You gain like 1,000 followers like this already on TikTok. And I just love the resources and stuff you do. And I think the other thing I love is the authenticity. Like you speak in Spanish for your
Hmm.
videos, right? You put English captions or whatever, but like you are speaking for your audience of like the Latino community, which I think it's great. But I think the next thing is talking a little about your journey, right? So you and I met in med school. We both went to the University of Connecticut. I'm
Hmm.
from Connecticut, so this is nothing for me, but you are from Puerto Rico. So tell the people about, your journey from being born and raised in Puerto Rico to then deciding to become a doctor. And then out of all places of 50 states, you decide to come to Connecticut.
So from the beginning, I grew up in Isabela, Puerto Rico. That's on the west side of the island, near where my wedding was, like 40 minutes from there. Beautiful place, love it, love the people. But at that point of time, it had very little resources, very little exposure to medicine. I went to public school over there, and after high school, I went to undergrad in the University of Puerto Rico, Aguadilla, which is 20 minutes from where I grew up. While I was an undergrad, I was a weightlifting athlete and I was an OChem tutor. And while I was there, I met someone who got accepted into dental school for UConn. And he told me about the HCOP MCAT prep program. So I was able to do a summer, which it was virtual because of COVID at that time. But it was a UConn program where I got to learn how to study for the MCAT. I did mock interviews. They helped me with my essays. And also, I got to experience what the UConn community was all about. Feel like the people that I met, the professors, the doctors, everyone was very genuine, very friendly, and they wanted to see us succeed. So I applied for med school and I got a offer for a full scholarship. And honestly, uh, it was the best decision financially at that time. Um, and also for my personal growth, I've never lived in the US before. It was my first time actually going to uh, Connecticut. So it was a tough decision, but I was very excited, and I feel like it was the best next step for my personal growth. So happy that I ended up here and don't regret my decision.
Great. And once again, for those who don't know, HCOP is the Health Careers Opportunities Program, which is essentially a pipeline program that's conducted through UConn Health. And so they have pipeline programs going all the way back from high school, but even within college, they have different tracks. As Samuel alluded to, they have a MCAT program, which is like a 6 week immersive program for you to study and get ready for the MCAT as well as for the DAT for those who are in dentistry. They have other programs as well. I remember for myself, I did their summer research program to where, as a college student, you can get plugged into a lab and be working with a research mentor and get a publication out of it. And they have a multitude of other programs that they have supported through UConn Health, which is amazing. And once again, how Samuel and I met. Going back to, obviously using HCOP as your pipeline to get into UConn, you mentioned the scholarship opportunity for you. There was obviously an interesting story for you with this scholarship because you mentioned this on one of your videos on TikTok. Like, if you did not get this scholarship, you actually would not really come to UConn. So talk a little bit
Yeah,
about that.
yeah. So I knew that the scholarship existed because the friend I met that got accepted into dental school, he got it, and he told me that medical students could also get it. So at that point, Uh, I I knew that going to the US for med school was going to be very expensive, and I already had an offer in another school which was cheaper in Puerto Rico. So I said, the only way this makes sense if the only way this makes sense financially is if I get this scholarship. So the next day after I got accepted, I called UConn and I basically told them that if I didn't get the scholarship, I wasn't going to be able to go to their med school. And it was a little bit of a gamble. It was, I don't know how it was going to be perceived. At the beginning, they told me that they couldn't, you know, say for sure that I was going to get it. But the next day, I got a call that I was accepted for the scholarship. So after that, everything worked out. So I decided to go to UConn, and that's where I met Nicole. That's we like you mentioned, we just got married, and it was a very exciting 4 years of my life.
That's great. And once again, I think it shows you the idea about just taking a chance on yourself, right? Like, you didn't know what the outcome was. You're just like, hey, like, I'm just going to go for this. And once again, it tells you a good message to people of like, if you're really persistent about doing it, something, just do it because you never know, right? Like, if you never reached out to UConn, you probably would have been at the other school we've never met. You would have not met Nicole. Like, there's so many other
Exactly.
things. So once again, you just
Yeah.
got to go out and then do something.
And you gotta believe in yourself. If you don't believe that you deserve that scholarship, if you don't believe you deserve that opportunity, nobody's gonna go out and do the things for you. You just gotta believe in yourself, take a chance, and if they say no, they say no. You keep going. You try and bang on the next door, and hopefully one day it'll work out.
A great, great message. I think also too, why specifically being a doctor?
A doctor. So I had an experience when I was 16 years old. I don't think we've ever talked about this. It's not something I've shared, but it's I had an incident when I was 16 that showed me how fragile life was. And I was basically in a fight where I got stabbed. I had a large wound on my left elbow, very deep. You could even see my bones, and a lot of superficial wounds in other parts of my body. And that day, the doctor told me that I had a superficial cut in my neck that if it would have been a little bit deeper, I could have died. And, that really had an impact on me. My wound from the left arm got infected. I was in the hospital for a week. I saw all the sacrifices that my mom had to make. She, using all our money to cover the hospital expenses, and I really felt like a burden, and I didn't want to be a burden to my family. I wanted to be someone that helped them and gives them the life they deserve. And at the end of the day, I also learned the power of a conversation. That doctor changed the way I viewed life just by having a conversation with me, and I felt like I wanted to do the same for other people in the future. So that's when my journey to medicine started.
That's absolutely an amazing story, and once again, a very scary story to really think about, like, you're that close to potential death, but I think now thinking back to 16-year-old Bimby, when you were like, "Okay, it's time for me to buckle up," did you have any mentors at that time to kind of figure out your process? How did that go for you at that time?
At that time, it was tough because I didn't know, like I mentioned at the beginning, very little exposure to medicine on that side of the island. So I didn't know anyone who was a doctor or that was on that road to becoming a doctor. Um, but I just looked in my surroundings and saw what other people were doing. I knew some people from high school that were very smart, wanted to go through a medicine route. So, and they wanted to study biology. So that's what I did at that time. I just said, okay, they want to do biology because they want to be doctors. I'll do that. So I kind of copied what they were doing. Then when I started my undergrad in biology, I met more people that knew more about the process and talked to me about research. I had a great professor that he saw that I was motivated and just invited me to do research when I didn't even know what research was. And that opened a lot of doors for me. And it was kind of like a day by day process. I never knew I never had a clear roadmap of how it was gonna be. I just along the way, I kept meeting people that knew what they were doing, and I kind of adjusted my steps based on that until I think the biggest turning point was when I met Sergio, the guy that got matched into UConn, and he really gave me the pieces I needed to um, know what the MCAT was, know how to prep. He got me into this Age Cop program that then taught me all the other parts of the application. And that kind of just gave me the last pieces I needed to go into medical school. So no real mentorship from doctors. And that's the reason why I wanted to open my social media and talk to the Latino community, because I know there's a lot of younger people just like me that don't see any doctors around. They don't think it's possible because they don't have any mentors. So nobody's telling them that's possible. So I figured if they can see me and see my story and see how I made it, they could follow that or something similar and end up, living their dreams of being a doctor. And not only a doctor, even for any other profession. Like if just letting them know that not because you don't see anyone around you that's done it, it doesn't mean it's impossible. You just gotta look for the right resources, take it one day at a time, one step, and eventually, if you stay consistent, you're gonna make it.
I totally agree. I mean, you and I kind of have similar background in terms of like just not having any exposure to medicine. Like for me, once again, I had zero family members in medicine. I'm first gen everything. I'm the youngest of four, but kind of had to figure out everything, like you mentioned, on my own. And it took one person to inspire me to where I was able to learn from that person. And then they put me to the another direction of another person. And you kept building from there. So I think it goes to show to people, like, once again, the power of networking and just really just taking advice from people who are already ahead of you. So if you can find those people, lean onto them very dearly because once again, you never know where people and places can really take you in life.
Exactly, exactly. Always follow advice. There's gonna be people along the way that are gonna tell you that that's not possible. You're dreaming too much. Be realistic. but always listen to the people that are where you want to go. Not, and it's not that people want to, they don't want to see you succeed. Maybe they just don't know that it's possible as well because they haven't seen it. You just got to trust in yourself and look for the right people to follow, and it's possible.
Completely agree there. So now, Samuel, the man who became to medical school, how was the adjustment for you coming from Puerto Rico to Connecticut, where you kind of came here by yourself, you know?
Yeah. So at the beginning, it was tough. I was very shy. I wasn't confident in my English. So the first group of people that I talked with was the HCOP students because we did the summer program together. We already connected, so it was an easy transition to talk with them. And over the years, I just started getting more comfortable with English, and I just started building connections with people through the activities that I did on a day-to-day basis. For example, I like to go to the gym every morning, so I had a community at the gym. I like to play basketball, so every Monday we played basketball. I had a community there, and there's also a large Hispanic community at UConn and in Connecticut. So eventually, we just ended up being a big family of Latinos who would get together randomly to just do stuff, eat, play pickleball, or just hang out for a little bit. So it was a tough transition. Being away from family was very tough. It's something that I still struggle with, but I was able to make friends that feel like family here in the U.S. in Connecticut and in Boston. So very grateful.
Yeah, and for the listeners, because once again, Samuel and I went to school together and we're really good friends, is Samuel is one of the most structured people you'll ever meet. Like first and second year, especially, this man had a routine where if class started at 8 o'clock, this man was up by 4 or 5 a.m. He was at the gym. He worked out consistently all the time. He would prioritize his sleep. That was like the running joke between all of us in our friend group.
Yeah.
This man was all about his sleep. Right now, you post like your whoop of how much sleep you've been tracking. Exactly, look at that. See, exactly. One of the most regimented people. And so where did that structure come from? Like, was it from your upbringing? I know you mentioned, like, obviously growing up, you were a weightlifter. Did it come from
Yeah.
those days?
So I've been into sports since I was a little kid. I really liked basketball. That was my main thing. You can't, because you've seen me in persons, but to the listeners, I'm 5'3". So basketball just genetically wasn't it. I was a runner in high school. I was a weightlifter in undergrad, and while I was in med school, I thought I was gonna do some bodybuilding. So I've just always been into sports, and you need to be disciplined to go through sports. To get better, you need to have a system. You need to train at the same time. You need to eat correctly. And it's tough seeing progress in a sport or in something that's like in the arts field. You need to be consistent, put the work in every day, because if not, you're not gonna get better. And I took my life in medicine also with the same structure and consistency that I did sports, because I knew that if I wanted to build something in a career in medicine, I needed to have the same approach. Just be structured every day, take care of yourself. Sleep, like you mentioned, was a big thing. Is It always is, it still is. I noticed early on in my trainings that if I didn't sleep well, I just didn't perform. I couldn't perform the next day. At that point, I didn't have a whoop, so I couldn't track my sleep. But I knew that if my sleep wasn't consistent, my workouts were just not gonna be optimal. So I adopted that in undergrad, and it's one of the things that I think also changed my life. I just wake up with more energy. After I exercise in the morning, I feel more alert. I feel like I can concentrate more when I'm studying, and it's a huge part of my life, and it's something that I want to continue doing during my years as a resident and attending, and even in the future. So, um, yeah.
Oh, I agree. I think self-care is very important. And I think it's a topic that a lot of medical students need to hear because I think it's so easy to get like consumed by
Mhm.
the constant studying and hours. And I think both of us can agree, like you can study for like 16 hours straight and there's still
Yeah,
so much work to do to where you kind of have to have those boundaries where it's like, okay, it's 8 o'clock. I gotta go to bed, right? Like it's
exactly.
time to, spend time with family or something like that. You gotta figure out those priorities very early on if you're gonna really succeed.
And you were the same way, I remember. You were always like, I'm all about my sleep. You gotta have that rest. Because to be honest, like you mentioned, you could study 16 hours in a day. If you don't sleep well, you're not gonna remember it the next day. If you're burnt out, you're not gonna be able to use that information in your exam. So just and you're also taking care of people like in a day-to-day basis. And if you don't take care of yourself, how are you gonna be able to take care of people in the future? Those are the two ways that I look at it. Just, gotta take care of yourself before taking care of other people, and also just in terms of optimizing your time studying and working, it's better if you have a structure in terms of sleep, exercise, and what you eat.
Yeah, totally agree there. Now, for you in medical school, obviously you're about to be a doctor and thinking about, okay, what career path would I want to go on? Was anesthesia something you came in knowing that you wanted to do, or was it something that kind of transformed over time?
I honestly knew I had an idea that I wanted to do anesthesia. At the beginning, it was mainly because of the procedural aspect and the physiology that we worked with. But once I did my elective, I really felt like the decision was based on the incident I had when I was 16 years old. Like I
Mm.
mentioned, I went through a period where I had to reflect and I saw how fragile life was. And I saw that in my patients in a day to day basis. I saw how, people are scared before going into surgery. It's a very tough time. There's a lot of reflection, a lot of unknowns, like what could happen during the surgery, what's going to happen afterwards, how's my life going to be after this. And I could really empathize with them. And seeing, being that person that could be a calm presence for them during the surgery, take care of them during the surgery, make sure they're safe, and seeing how they do well after their procedures, just it was very fulfilling, and it was something that I saw myself doing every day for the rest of my career. So I'm very happy I chose this field, and I'm very excited to start. I still haven't started my anesthesia time. In a month, I'll be starting to go into the OR, so I'm excited to start that journey.
I know you're gonna be super excited for that part, but I think
Yeah.
even too, like, for you in terms of a lot of your inspiration and what you want to do of impacting the Latino community, I think anesthesia also really resonates a lot because when I think about a lot of times, like even for me in emergency medicine, I deal with a lot of Spanish speaking populations. And something that I always find frustrating and hard is that we don't have a lot of representation and,
Mhm.
always having to like bring a translator and stuff. It just doesn't hit the same versus like when you have somebody who's from the community that they can look up to, you can crack jokes between one another, and
Mhm.
they're like, "Oh my God, you're from the same place," or anything like that. There's something there. And I think especially is so important in the field of anesthesia or even surgery, where these are the scariest moments of these people's lives and trying to communicate with them, what the procedure is. Here's how we're going to take care of you. That goes such a long way for like the Spanish speaking community as well.
Yeah, no, the experiences I had with Spanish speaking patients when I was in my during my anesthesia days, and even in surgery, um, when they were on the pre-op area and people were using translators to communicate with them, they were always very stressed. And when I walked into the room and they heard me speak Spanish, the connection was instant. From that moment on, you are probably the only person that could really understand that patient and really take care of them. So, I really feel what you're saying. It is part of the also the reason I went into anesthesia, because patients do better the better they feel before the procedure. Patients that are stressed before going into surgery have worse outcomes, and I really feel like I connect with them. I I've been told that I have a calm demeanor, and I think not only I liked the job, I feel like I had a personality that goes with the job. So
Yes, you definitely 100% have a calm person. You're one of the most calmest, just cool, collected people that I actually really know. Like, nothing phases Samuel for the most part. Like, even if it does, he's just like, "Okay."
we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Exactly. He's always like, "I'll see what
There's
happens." He's
no
like, "Ah,
point on
okay."
getting stressed. You just have
Yeah.
to, you know, take a breather and figure it out.
Yes, agreed. So right now we're in April is around the corner, and so that means there's gonna be a lot of medical students gearing up for application season. Asia, historically has always been a little bit more on the competitive side because people start to realize how great anesthesia is as a career. You ended up doing away rotations, which, for those who don't know, are generally between 2 to 4 weeks of almost like audition rotations where you can go across the country to really perform and get a letter of recommendation out of it and really get your foot in the door at places that you potentially may want to go to. So it's a great opportunity for you if you've never been to an area before to see what it's like, or if you're really interested in a program, you're like, oh, I really want to go here. This is a great way for you to establish good networking and tools. So, can you explain a little bit about your away rotation process and like how was away rotations for you?
So I chose my away rotation. I did it at Stanford. The reason I went to Stanford for an away rotation is because I wanted to see how California was. Um, Obviously, I miss the heat from Puerto Rico. I thought I wanted to leave. I thought I wanted to leave the Northeast because it's obviously cold. So that was the main reason I went to Stanford for my away rotation. And the reason I did it was, like I explained, went to California, experienced the culture, experienced the people. I loved it over there. Uh, I did 4 weeks. I did 2 weeks of general OR and then 2 weeks of OB anesthesia. I realized during that time that I also into OB anesthesia. Getting to work with people in the labor and delivery side of things is very fulfilling. Seeing the moms after they give birth and see the newborns is something that is always, the majority of the time, very joyful. Um, Anesthesia is getting more competitive, and I've seen program directors recommend doing away rotations. Me personally, I didn't ask for a letter of rec from my away rotation because at that point my application was already done. So, but I would recommend, if you have the opportunity to do an away rotation, do it for two things, because either you want to experience how it is living in a certain area for a period of time, and if there's a program that you really like and you want to make sure that's the place that you want to train in, that's also a reason to do an away rotation. There are some people that away rotation, they might not have to do away rotations depending on where they want to match. If they have a strong connection with their medical school, and they want to stay, if, for example, I met a lot of people from UConn that grew up at Connecticut, loved UConn as a residency program, and they had a family there. So for them, it didn't make sense to explore other options, and they knew they wanted to stay there. So in that case, if you're going through a similar situation, doing an away rotation might not be for you. But for everyone else, I feel like away rotations are very useful if you have the money to do it, or if you find an opportunity to do it for free. You should definitely take advantage of it.
Yeah, and you touched on the piece at the end about the money aspect. For
Hmm.
you, was there any scholarship opportunities or any funding opportunities to help you? Because once again, you're now in Connecticut and you got to go all the way to Palo
Yeah,
Alto, which is all
yeah.
the way in California. How was that?
So the Stanford program had they had this program called SCORE, and it was for minority students at the time, where they paid for housing while you were in California. They also gave you a stipend to, help with food and driving and all that. And they also paired you with mentors that were from your same background. So I got to work during that time with Dr. Cesar Padilla. He was the founder or co-founder of the Latino Physician Day. So it was very exciting to have him as a mentor at that time. He taught me a lot about the process of becoming an anesthesiologist, and I saw a lot of Latino representation while I was there. So that's it 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 was easier for me to take that opportunity because there was the SCORE program that helped me get there. Otherwise, it would have been very expensive. I don't know if I would have taken that, you know, opportunity of going to Stanford and being there for a month because it would have been 4 to 5K easily uh, if I did it without the SCORE program.
Totally agree. And like I think that's also one of the hardest things about away rotations is that all this is really coming out of your own pocket.
Hmm.
But to Samuel's point, there are programs out there. I know, like I said, Stanford is one with the SCORE program. Yale has a whole underrepresented away rotation scholarship. Even at UConn, they also have the diversity scholarship. So for those who are listening and getting ready for away rotations applications, reach out to these programs directly because
Hmm.
sometimes too, even if they're not advertised, there is sometimes they also may have scholarship opportunities or grants or money that they can give away that just aren't really publicized on the internet. And so always just reach out and seek different opportunities because you don't want necessarily money to hide you away from an opportunity that might be very beneficial for you. So always seek those opportunities that are out there. And I could think about, I believe it's called the Farmers Database, is another database of various away rotations based on specialty, and they'll kind of connect you to the different scholarship opportunities that are out there as well. I remember using that when I was on my away rotation opportunity. So once again, take advantage of those opportunities that are out there.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. And so for you, now you've kind of done your away rotations and application wise for anesthesiology. Was there a thought process that you had in terms of picking the places that you wanted to go to in terms of applying for anesthesia programs?
Yeah. So, going back to that away rotation, after being a month in California, I realized that, it was too far from Puerto Rico we had to take connecting flights. The time difference was a big issue. Every time I called someone in the island, uh, I just felt like we were in a different world. And I'm sure I could have gotten adjusted to that, but at the time I said, I want to feel close to my family. I want to feel like it's accessible going to Puerto Rico. So I decided to stay in the East Coast. Along the way, I met people from MGH who were very nice and taught me about the cases that they were exposed to. They mentioned how they worked with world class experts, and also like not only having them available, knowing that they were very down to earth and willing to teach all the time. Really, uh, kind of that's what brought me to apply it to Harvard MGH. And then I experienced it during my interview day. People were very nice. They were very genuine, very down to earth. And after that, it just made the decision easy to rank them as my number one. But the process was more based on location than anything. I wanted to be close to family. I wanted to be close to the friends that the connections that I built in Connecticut. Like, we've seen each other a couple times after graduation just because it's a short drive. And I just didn't want to start over again in the other side of the US. So that's why I ended up staying here. And I've enjoyed it so far. Everything they told me is true. I've had a wonderful time during my intern year. I've gotten to do some emergency medicine rotations. A lot of Latino patients, which I didn't expect coming into to this program here in Boston. And we've also done ICU, surgery, medicine, different subspecialties like interventional pulmonology. I even did an elective called the Death of Anesthesia podcast, which is very cool. So very cool people, very cool environment, and excited to see what the next 3 years are gonna bring in the anesthesia side.
It's amazing, and unfortunately, the only downside is you haven't been able to escape the cold, and this past winter has probably been the most brutal winters we've had on the Northeast in a while, so, unfortunately, that's the only downside from that aspect,
Yeah.
but talking a little bit about residency for you, how has been the adjustment? Because I feel like for a lot of us coming out of M4 year, we're just like, "How the heck do we transition from one day being a medical student where you're kinda, like, sitting in the background to now they're looking up to you no longer as Samuel, but now you're Dr. Padilla." Like, how's that been?
Yeah, it was a tough transition. My first rotation, again, was in the emergency department. And as you know, things can get very hectic. And I remember my first patient. I had a differential, and I wanted to go and present it to someone to tell me, if my plan was right, like, are we gonna do this? And I couldn't find anyone because it was so busy. There were real emergencies happening, and that's when I realized, like, okay, I'm the one making the decisions right now, and it was kind of scary. But then I realized that, we already went through all that training. We know so much more than what we think we know. And even if you don't see someone, like, if you don't have that process of, like, someone telling you what to do, like, people are keeping an eye on you, and um they won't let bad things happen to patients, especially if you're an intern. People have their eyes on you, and they won't let you do something dangerous. If you are have the freedom to make decisions, is because um, you have the knowledge to make them, and they think that you're making the right decision. So it was scary at the beginning, but you know you get used to it throughout the months. Now it's kind of expected for you to know certain things once you progress along your intern year, and but it's still, that feeling of being a doctor and being there for the patients, and sometimes just calling the shots is something that I'm still getting used to. So um, it's a very exciting time.
Yeah, I agree. I remember my first day, for me, I also was in the emergency department my first rotation, and I introduced myself as a medical student, and I was like, "Oh, wait, I lied. No, I actually am the doctor." And it's
Yeah,
just weird because 'cause you're just so used to be like, "Oh, yeah, I'm Daniela, the medical student and part of the team," and now I'm like, "Wait, I'm Doctor Dennis?" Like,
yeah.
it feels weird introducing yourself as doctor.
I still sometimes I just say Sam. I don't know. I feel like the way I view it when I introduce myself with my first name, people, and I have the badge that says doctor, so they see Doctor Sam. They connect more with me. They feel like they can open up more. So I've been going sometimes by Sam, sometimes by Doctor Sam, depending on who I'm talking to. But it happened to me as well. Sometimes when I start a new rotation and I'm going to meet the attendings or the fellows, I go up to them and I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm Sam, the medical student." And then I realized, I'm like, "Oh wait, no, sorry, uh, anesthesia intern." So yeah, it's a process. It's a process. I want to see how that translates to when I start anesthesia. If will still have that same uh, medical student or like trainee mindset. So
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm excited for that. Also thinking back to the structure and routine that you've kind of had throughout your life, how are you able to implement that in residency? Like you just mentioned, recently got married, so you're in a relationship, you have family back home, you're very still big on health and fitness, sleep, and also residency is very demanding. How have you been able to find this balance through it all?
yeah, that's been the toughest part because, as you know, now we're working night shifts, day shifts, sometimes 24-hour calls, sometimes 12 days straight. It Keeping a schedule like that, it's nearly impossible because just the hours that you're working and the structure it doesn't align. But you just got to have a plan going into it. For example, if I had when I switch from nights to days, I see how I can keep sleeping 8 hours every day, but putting them in the earlier side of the day, going from like 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. and trying to keep that throughout the week. It's tough because sometimes you just have to miss activities, appointments, or you have to really restructure your life to make it work. But I feel like at the end of the day, it's worth it. Having a good sleep schedule, and taking care of yourself during residency, it's must be a priority. Um, but it doesn't always work out, and it's fine too. You try to optimize for the days that you can and the days that you have control. But there are some days where you just have to take the hit. If you're working a 24-hour call and that day you didn't sleep, it's okay. The next day you try to catch up and structure the following days ahead. But it's been very tough, I'm not gonna lie. But we get used to it, we adjust, and we'll have more control when we're attendings. That's what I said. Yeah.
Same here. Yeah, it's always a light at the end of the tunnel some way or another.
Yeah.
So it's just about just kind of getting through the moment. So that's always great things there. I think also with you now, as you're getting ready to transition to actual anesthesiology residency and now starting content creation, what's next for you, Samuel? What do you think you're going to be doing in terms of creating and having on your social media platforms? Like, what's the vision that you kind of have for yourself?
So right now, in terms of going into that part of my life, starting anesthesia and starting the content creation, I still have some stories that I want to tell people. I want them to get to know me more. And I have a month and a half to do that. And once I start my anesthesia rotations, I want to be able to record my journey, show them the process of what it takes to make an anesthesiologist. And just keeping, interacting with people, still, like you said, showing them how I structure my sleep, showing them how I'm able to keep doing my exercises every day. One of the goals I have that I haven't mentioned to people is that there's a High Rocks here in Boston this year. So as soon as the registration opens up, I'm gonna see if I can get in, and that's gonna be also one of my goals. Wanna, not only share the process of becoming an anesthesiologist, but also showing them how you can maintain a healthy lifestyle throughout the process. So, and the goal is always gonna be inspiring other people, motivating them, and giving them the information that they need. So I'll just be looking for ways to do that along the way.
I'm excited for you, and I can't wait to see all the amazing stuff that, once again, that you're already doing and building, and just seeing how you do things over time. So, with that, Dr. Padilla, where can people find you, including your social medias?
So right now I'm on Instagram and TikTok as Dr. Bimbi. So Dr. Bimbi, Bimbi. And I'm thinking about opening a YouTube channel where I'm gonna lay out the different strategies I use to study first the steps and also for the MCAT. So let's see what happens.
Of it. So, once again, Dr. Padilla, thank you so much for joining me on the Resident Founder podcast. I'll make sure to put all the links to your social media, including TikTok, down in the description for all the people listening on YouTube, and also for the same thing for all my listeners on Spotify and streaming platforms. And once again, thank you so much for joining me, Samuel.
Thank you, Danella. I admire you a lot. Thank you for having me today and continue inspiring other people.
Of it. Let me just hit stop.